Welcome to BrainSTEM, the podcast for anyone curious about the brain, brain development, and brain disorders. I'm your host, Dr. Hilary Marusak, and today we're exploring the powerful intersection of personal experience and scientific innovation. Our guest is someone I've had the privilege of getting to know through my work with One Mind. Brandon Staglin is the co-founder and chief advocacy and engagement officer, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple hats there, but Brandon is not only a national leader in mental health research and advocacy, but also someone who's transformed his own lived experience with schizophrenia into a driving force for systematic change. From accelerating neuroscience-based mental health solutions to elevating lived experience leadership to shaping policy and even workplace culture, Brandon's work is reshaping what mental health innovation truly looks like. Brandon, thanks so much for joining me today.
You're welcome, Hilary. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you for that really kind introduction. I'm honored to be with you today.
Super excited to chat with you. We've had a couple of brief conversations, but it's always been when you're, doing the One Mind Music Festival for brain health, which we'll chat about. So really looking forward to this conversation. So can you just start by telling us a little bit about your journey? So starting with your early experience with mental illness and then how it really shaped your understanding of you and your place in the world.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been interested in science ever since I was a young teenager. I was a big science fiction fan starting around that age and still am today. My early experiences with that and with mortality in terms of the death of my grandfather when I was 14 inspired me to learn more and more as much as I could about the mind and how it's generated from the brain and what it means to be a human being, like a living, breathing being in the world. And so I read a lot about those topics, both from a philosophical and there wasn't much neuroscience back then in that field in the 1980s when I was a teenager, but a lot of philosophical work and cognitive science about that at the time. And I also had this parallel goal to build the world's first starship, which I had originated. Thank you. I want to do something grandiose, but good for humanity in the long run. And so I studied hard all throughout high school and formed a plan to achieve that goal someday down the line in my life. At age 14, I set out this roadmap for myself, and so. I studied hard, as I mentioned, and worked hard throughout high school and first year of college on this dream that I had. And then toward the end of my first year in college, I began to develop some odd sensations and experiences, things like envisioning myself like having terrible nightmares and believing that they were having real significance for me in my real life, that I need to listen to what they were saying or heed what they symbolized. And it was a stressful freshman year in college for a number of reasons. But after that year, I'd come back to my parents' home in California where I grew up and was beginning to think about what I was going to do for that summer, trying to find a job to work at, kind of help to find myself as an adult. I was 18 and wanted to engage in something professional in a new way, which I had not done before. So having difficulty finding work and kind of reeling from a breakup that I had with a girlfriend that year, I felt really stressed, and my thoughts were rolling round and around in my head the early weeks of that summer. And after a few weeks, my parents left for France for a trip, vacation. I was initially going to go with them, but I changed my mind and decided to stay back so I could keep searching for work. And that's when I had my first psychotic episode, when there was nobody around to talk to about it or to share about it with. And it was as if all of the tension in me, basically the right side of my head snapped, and it was as if I couldn't recognize any of the emotions that I was used to feeling for the people in my life, the things that I loved and cared about, art that I loved. Just thinking about these things, it didn't bring back any of the emotions that I was used to. In fact, there was just a dark swirling void in its place. And it was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced then or since.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, it was that half my identity had vanished. And I couldn't recognize who I was. And so I spent the next few days wandering around the community to try and bring back that sense of self that I had, trying to find a quiet place and kind of meditatively reach inside and find the part of me that had fallen away. Hard to describe what that means, but unsuccessfully. So fortunately, a friend helped me get to a psychiatric hospital a couple of days later. And that's where that was my first engagement with the mental health care system. I don't want to use the term admit because as if I did something wrong, but I didn't want to acknowledge that I had a mental health condition. I didn't want to acknowledge that I couldn't handle it myself. So I very, very reluctantly entered the psychiatric hospital with the encouragement of my friend and her mom. And that's where I was first prescribed medication. Very, very, very reluctantly took it, fearing that it might turn me into a zombie or some such thing. And so had some trying experiences in that hospitalization. My parents came back from France having learned about that experience, having learned about me being in the hospital within a few days, and took me home to where we lived together. And I began to recover that summer. Mm-hmm. So found a psychiatrist that I could trust after 6 months of trial and error, during which time I was skirting suicide perpetually. We found a medicine that actually helped me to stabilize. So that plus staying involved with my community by volunteering at the Oakland Zoo and the Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito and taking classes at UC Berkeley kept me engaged and wanting to do things that mattered and had a purpose.
Yeah.
While I recovered from that episode, and then and my family's love was just hugely beneficial for me understanding that I was worth something, even in that terrible state, and that I wanted to feel that love again for them, which I couldn't feel then. So working back toward that goal is what drove me to focus on my recovery for that summer and beyond. Yeah, that's how it started.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I mean, there's just so many aspects to it that I would love to dive into, and it just paints such an amazing picture of, you're going to college, it's this culmination of stressors, and you really painted a very nice picture for what schizophrenia looks like from more of a human perspective. So, and I'm also just smiling over here because you said community is something that was kind of a turning point for you, and you really created a community of mental health advocates and research through One Mind. So,
thank you.
You're just having this huge ripple effect through this experience. I mean, looking back at, your road to recovery, and I'm sure it was extremely difficult, and I can't even imagine, what were the things that really mattered, like family, community? Speak more about what's helped you along the way.
Yeah, thank you. I already touched on family and community, and that's grown over the years. Now my family is also my wife and our dog, which I didn't have back then. And so they're great supports for me too. It's great to have a reality check every now and then. Mm-hmm. I went through some periods when I was very anxious, and having someone to touch base with on the thoughts that I'm having to understand what they really mean and not what I'm kind of spiraling into thinking they mean. Sure. Is super helpful to stabilize me. I developed the ability to recognize when I'm beginning to develop symptoms again, like paranoia. I occasionally get that. It's been a long time since I have, but it's only when I'm really, really stressed for a long period of time that those start to come back. And with their help and my own insight, I can dial back the stress and manage that. After I did have a second episode, about 6 years after the first, I was working as an engineer at Space Systems L'Oreal, engineering firm in Palo Alto, building communication satellites, which is, wow, as you might guess, was my dream job at the time, wanting to build ultimately a starship someday. And I loved that job. Had to very, very sadly resign from it when I had another episode. in that workplace environment in the 1990s, like I would imagine any workplace environment would have been back then, no one talked about mental illness.
Right.
And I didn't, on my interview for the job, I didn't mention that I had experienced what I experienced a few summers before with regard to schizophrenia. I didn't mention that I took medication for it, anything like that. And so, and they hired me, and I did really well for a while until the stress built up, and I went off my medication at the same time. I'd gotten into graduate school. I wanted to expand my career and to do more in engineering, so I applied to graduate school, got into MIT and Stanford, and I was going to go to MIT for a Master of Engineering. But I knew I'd have to sleep less than 9 hours per night, which clozapine that I was taking at the time as a side effect ensured that I did. So I went off the clozapine and just had a terrible either relapse or you might say withdrawal. I'm not sure exactly which it was because the symptoms were very different after I went off the clozapine. And when I went back up on the clozapine, it didn't have the same effect anymore. I understand that's common, people going off and back on a medication now. It was a devastating setback. I couldn't focus. I couldn't. I had no motivation. I had no ability to read something for extended periods of time, and I was in a lot of distress. So I had to go on disability for a while, and ultimately resign from the job, forfeit the graduate school admission, and re-enter the psychiatric hospital. So that devastated my confidence. It took a lot longer to recover from that episode than the first one, as is typical when this happens for folks. But what helped, you asked what helped me. And so what helped me in that episode were a number of things, including an innovation that One Mind had funded the study of that year. Cognitive training is a neuroplasticity-based intervention that enables the brain to remold its neural pathways in response to progressively more difficult, more challenging targeted experiences. And in this case, it was exercises I did on a laptop. And doing these brain games on a laptop helped me within about 6 months to return to work, enjoy time with friends again, which I couldn't do for a long time, and read a novel again, which I enjoyed. So back to science fiction. But it was a turning point in my recovery. And so that it snowballed since then, the abilities that I've had to re-engage with life again and work.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to talk more about kind of the inception of One Mind. So can you speak about how it was created? Where did it come
Yeah, so my family founded One Mind in 1995, so 5 years after my initial episode, inspired by our shared experience with my schizophrenia diagnosis, and also what we learned from many other families about their experiences with their loved ones and serious mental illnesses. And we understood that science was necessary to improve the treatments that were available, because the side effects like I experienced from my medications and the lack of efficacy of so many of the early medications that I took for me underscore the fact that, wouldn't it be great if you could just diagnose somebody with like a blood test or a biological test or something simple, and instead of having to go through, for so many people, years of misdiagnosis. For me, it took a long time to get the right diagnosis too. And then once you have a diagnosis, months or years of trial and error of getting a treatment that works. Right. And even if you do find something, it may not work after a while. So precision psychiatry is something we're working on now. We didn't call it that then, but that motivated our sense of urgency that science was necessary to advance mental health care. So we started by funding scientists like the one I mentioned that led the study that I was in for cognitive training. Her name was Dr. Sofia Vinogradov, now chair of psychiatry at University of Minnesota. And other scientists. Ultimately, we launched the Rising Star Awards program, of which you're an extraordinarily valued member of that our 2024 cohort. Yeah, 2024 cohort. Thank you for being such a great example of that.
Thank you,
Hilary. You're welcome. And so we funded lots of science since then, and we've grown into other fields too. Happy to share more about those if you're interested.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many things to chat about. But yeah, thank you again for painting such a picture of what actually psychiatry looks like right now. And there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of suffering, as you said. I mean, the gold standard is we have these, one size fits all approaches and they don't work for many people. And it's a long and tedious process. And that's assuming you even get to the right person who can make a correct diagnosis, which is part of the challenge too. So, that's why I think what you're doing with One Mind and really investing in research that's cutting edge to say, hey, we need to do better is so, so important. So I just thank you for your leadership in that space. It's so needed.
You're welcome. Yeah, in this current era when science is challenged, we're really grateful to have the opportunity to support the scientific community and offer ways scientists can support one another as well through connecting with one another. And I know you work on that as well, but also grateful that our community, as we're a philanthropically funded organization, and so grateful that our community has been so supportive, especially now. We were able to give 5 Rising Star Awards this year versus 3 in previous years, thanks to the generosity of our community and our sponsors. It's heartwarming to see that.
Yeah, and it's really inspiring and elevating the next generation of researchers. As you said, when right now science is under attack, I have so many trainees that are questioning why go into this field when, society and the administration currently are saying we don't care about this. And in reality, we do care. Everyone has been touched by mental illness or addiction or suffering. So again, I just applaud you. In addition to One Mind being a leader in almost everything but mental health and innovation, it's been a leader in really incorporating people like yourself with lived experience of mental illness into the work and into the, innovations in this space. And as you said previously, like you didn't say anything to, your prior supervisors when you landed, your dream job. And I'm in the mental health space. I'm in a psychiatry department, and people that I work with still don't feel comfortable disclosing. So from your perspective, why is it so important to have people with lived experiences in these conversations? And speak a little bit about the One Mind Experiences Council, which you chair and which you formed.
Thank you. It's super important to integrate the perspectives of people with lived experience in developing new and even delivering current mental health services and products. It's important for a number of reasons. For one thing, when you're developing something or delivering something, if you haven't had experience with what the condition you're aiming to treat is, or with people that experience that condition, if you haven't had that experience yourself, you won't understand very important things about the condition that you could then apply to helping the person in a much more effective way. For example, let me say a bit about our Lived Experience Initiative and what we're doing, and then I'll explain why. I'll give you my example. So we have a lived experience community at One Mind, and I launched it 2 years ago. I'm chair of our Lived Experience Council. This community consists of currently 6 members of our Lived Experience Council who are amazing advocates. Some are scientists, some are entrepreneurs. There is a behavioral health services leader and an advocate as well. Pulverizing the stigma, is also an entrepreneur. You had John Nelson on your show a few months ago. Thank you. At any rate, John and I were talking recently, and we've been consulting with one of the companies in One Mind's accelerator program. The accelerator program helps entrepreneurs who are starting up companies to help people with mental illnesses in a variety of ways. And one of the things we've been talking about with this company was a new product they're developing, like a new product they're developing for a study that may be funded by a large foundation. And they needed to involve lived experience in their grant application in order to get the funding. And so I'm glad that was a requirement, because this cause is making very slow traction in the world overall, which is why we're doing what we're doing. But here's an example that may accelerate that. So we were able to advise this organization that they had overlooked a very important factor. So like they were developing a monitoring system for mental health, and we were able to advise them that if they their monitoring system didn't provide value back to the users, the people with lived experience who are they're monitoring, nobody would use it. And so I've learned this through a lot of studies as well as my own personal experience. So, and John agreed. And so they're beginning to integrate that into the development of their product. And so we believe it'll have a much better chance of getting funded. And I'll fill you in later on whether it does.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah, thanks. And having an impact on real people as a result. So hopefully that makes it concrete.
Yeah.
But for broader context, our Lived Experience Initiative aims to connect leaders in society with people with mental illnesses who are in recovery and working fields related to mental health. So we have this dual expertise, as my colleague on the council, Uma Chatterjee, calls it. And we can advise them how to meet the genuine needs of their communities in ethical, engaging, and effective ways so that they can succeed in their pursuit, both for the people they aim to treat and also for themselves and whatever companies or institutions they work with.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love what you're doing so much. I mean, there's this idea that I'm in academia, so I can say this, but academics are so siloed in our research. And yeah, there's people in labs like myself who develop these, exciting new treatments. But as you said, if the people aren't going to be receptive to it or don't understand it or don't see the value, then they're not going to, benefit from the treatment. So that's a really great example of like, hey, you need to be considering the population of interest. So I hope it catches fire.
Thank you. It's beginning to grow. And we're planning to put more resources behind it in 2026, which is encouraging. Another reason why it's important, and you touched on it a moment ago, is that when the community sees something's been co-developed with people people they identify with, and they're much more likely to adopt it and feel and trust it, especially at a time when institutional trust is at an all-time low in our society. And so, there's a large movement, kind of a backlash against psychiatry in general,
right?
And involving people with lived experience in improving psychiatry, so it really does meet people's needs, will be a really important factor in rebuilding that trust and enabling both psychiatry to succeed, but also enabling people to benefit from what psychiatry can offer.
Exactly. Yeah, trust is so, so important. And I love that you're making partners in research and helping to build that trust with the community. And just a shout out to some of my friends, John and Uma. They are excellent champions for this cause. They could do anything. They could build that starship with you. So I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Totally. Yeah, they're awesome. So are Alex and Scott and Linnea, also on the council. Yeah.
Amazing folks. Yeah, definitely shout out. I will link to some of their, Uma has a fantastic podcast. I'll link to some of that in the bio. Oh man, Brandon, I have so much to chat about. Okay, let's pivot now to policy and advocacy. So you've done a lot of work on major initiatives, statewide psychosis programs. You've done some recent research on the future of schizophrenia care. So is there something in that space that you want to share with us that you're most excited about right now?
Sure. Yeah, so having lived with schizophrenia now for 35 years, I've had some momentous experiences with the condition, and I met many other people living with the condition as well, and had the great privilege to have met many scientists and innovators in the space, and learn from them as well. And they've been role models for me in my early advocacy career. I still look up to many leaders who are in science today who just really inspire me to lead with heart and compassion and courage. One thing that I think is important in innovation is the three things I'm most excited about in innovation for schizophrenia care today, based on what I've learned. One of them is the power of peers. Touching back to the lived experience initiative that we have, it's related to that as well. But many people with lived experience with mental health conditions go into work as a mental health practitioner, often as a peer support specialist. And from my work earlier on with the early psychosis care clinics in California, I've learned that those peer support specialists are sometimes the most effective members of a care team, because they have those shared experiences with the people they're treating or working with for support, and those people trust them, and they can inspire those folks toward recovery and connect with them in a really deep way that is healing in and of itself. So also, it doesn't take as much training to become a peer support specialist as it does to become a psychiatrist.
Sure.
And so, as a way to augment the workforce in mental health, focusing on peers could be a very effective and cost-efficient way to rapidly grow the mental health workforce.
Yeah, just badly underutilized, few workforce people available is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. The second innovation, I think, is, well, I'll just highlight one more thing, in that peers do incredible work. Unfortunately, they're often underpaid relative to the value they bring, and not always taken as seriously as they should be by the care teams in which they're part of. I've done some research and found this and talked to some peers about it. So I think it's essential, going back to the point of integrating lived experience into this leadership of mental health care and mental health overall, that people who are peers are recognized not just as people who are sick by the care team, or not as qualified as any other member of the care team, but that bring unique value and unique strengths. And I'll touch on that more later when we talk about the Launchpad program, when we have time for that. So that peer support is one thing. The second thing is arts-based interventions and therapies. So I've been a real believer in the use of music for healing.
Yep.
I enjoy practicing and playing guitar. It brings me a sense of joy, as well as a sense of mastery, like a sense of growing skill. I wouldn't call myself a master anyway, but progressing toward it is what matters, in my viewpoint, and a sense of real integration of my awareness. And that's, I think, what conscious essentially is. And having an integrated sense of awareness, going to integrated mind, integrated brain, is what can bring on better mental health. And so it's been hugely helpful for me. I wrote an original song about schizophrenia recovery and performed it at 4 venues around the nation in 2017.
Wow.
Including One Mind's Music Festival, where Lyle Lovett lent me his guitar to perform it on stage.
Oh, cool. I have to look that up after. I didn't know you did this.
Yeah. It was what a highlight that was of my advocacy career up until that point.
Yeah.
And I have that song on video. I'll share the link with you.
I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the third thing is precision psychiatry, which I already touched on, as hugely important. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it just kind of embodies the One Mind logo behind you. Community again, like the arts, music. I think of One Mind and music with the music festival. And then a precision psychiatry, this idea that every person is unique and they deserve the best, most tailored treatment. So I love that. That's really the thing that comes across. I want to get to the Launchpad in a moment, but I want to take a second and just hear, straight from the people who know what's going on the most, what, you guys fund so many startups and so much promising research. What are you most excited for in this moment? What's super innovative or on the horizon for you?
Yeah, we've had some wonderful applicants to our 2026 cohort, and I won't reveal anything about them now because we haven't announced any of them yet.
Dang, can't get insider information.
Focusing on 2025 cohort and the accelerator, there was a heavy representation of AI-based therapy companies and those that integrate AI into precision psychiatry as well. And they're doing some truly amazing, groundbreaking things. One of the companies, Slingshot, with their ASH, AI-based mental health, emotional well-being counselor LLM called ASH, was just featured in the New York Times, and they're making a lot of progress in growing their company. They just had a huge fundraise. Excited for their success, but also cautiously hopeful that that AI-based you might call it therapy, but they're not using that term because there's a lot of concern in the psychiatric or psychological community about AI for therapy. So they're, from my viewpoint, they're taking a kind of diplomatic approach to entering the field. But I'm cautiously optimistic that such programs could reach more people who can't access a human therapist.
Absolutely.
And help people with the kind of advice or counseling it's able to do. And what's really cool about that is that so many people throughout our world are turning to things like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever for mental health advice. It's just happening everywhere, and I've used it that way too, just experimentally. But Ash and others like it are developed with real evidence-based, in-depth training from psychological transcripts of therapeutic conversations and so forth, and training to help guide and refine the model by real therapists. And so it's a much better solution than ChatGPT would be for what you might call therapy. At least it aims to be that, so we hope it will succeed. Other things include in-person brick and mortar support for people with serious mental illnesses. So at the other end of the spectrum of scalability. We hope this can be scalable too, but it's a whole other ballgame to do that.
Sure.
One of the companies in our 2025 cohort was Townhome, which is a company that helps people with serious mental illnesses to find compassionate, respectful, and effective crisis care in supportive community, and then helps them kind of find a path for more ongoing care. But they have they really leverage peer support in that model so that their members support one another. And they find that kind of support is just as beneficial for the other members as is the support from the clinicians in many ways, or different ways, but many ways. So those are two things that I think are good examples.
Yeah, and I think your story is a really great example of that sure, the medications may have helped stabilize you, but it was really the community and the family support and finding meaning with the earlier volunteering that helped with the recovery.
Yeah, indeed. You may have read Tom Insel's book, Healing: Our Path from Mental Illness to Mental Health. He featured my story in the introduction.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm grateful to him for that.
Yeah, but, former NAMH director, add it to your holiday reading list like I'm doing right now.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. Good friend. But he talks about people, place, and purpose as essential for healing. And like when someone told him about the 3 Ps for mental health and psychiatry, what are they? Well, he first thing thought to himself of quoting him. He said, the Paxil, Prozac, and I don't know. No, people, place, and purpose.
That's funny. Yeah. I'm going to do a survey of my psychiatry friends and ask them what their 3 Ps are after this. Okay. very empirical. Okay. I'll definitely check that out. Thank you. All right. One Mind Launchpad and One Mind at Work. So you guys are, again, transforming workplace and using that to build a culture of healing for mental health and people with lived experience. So why is this the next frontier for mental health advocacy?
Yeah, so this goes back to my earlier days in advocacy for early psychosis, and I haven't gone into detail about that. I can follow up with anyone who's interested if they want to contact me afterward on LinkedIn or by email. I can share my email address, but maybe you can share it in the notes for the call of the recording or something. But
that'd be great.
Okay. At any rate, learn from that experience that the gold standard model for care for early psychosis is called coordinated specialty care in community settings. And it involves a whole team of practitioners, including a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, a family-based therapist, a case manager who's to bring it to tie it all together, peers, and a supportive education and employment specialist, which once the young person starts to recover from their early psychosis, helps them back on their feet so they can re-enter school or re-enter work in a safe and effective way for themselves as they rebuild their relationships. So I'm a firm believer this is a really great model, but there are the ways it can improve, and that is in the sense that the jobs that the supportive education employment and model and another parallel one called integrated placement and individualized placement and support IPS use help young people with psychosis get jobs, but they're generally not high potential career oriented jobs. Mm-hmm. They help them find jobs rapidly, but they're not a lot of room for growth once they're there. So our research has shown, and so I've heard from other practitioners. So we're creating a program to help young people or people in general with serious mental illness to find and grow meaningful careers within employers that want to not only support them, but also to so that those employers can benefit from their unique strengths and skills.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity is a term that's growing in recognition and understanding, and it just means that if living with a different brain doesn't only mean that you have things that make it harder for you to interact with the society overall sometimes, but also can be a great benefit for you in the work or your life that you have. So we've learned from the research we've done and done in partnership with others too, that in general, people who are living with mental health conditions endorse that they have great strengths in the workplace alongside the liabilities. Things like unique problem-solving abilities, coming at problems from different angles, creativity, empathy, loyalty, and a deep sense of insight into their own mental capabilities and emotional capabilities that people who are neurotypical don't usually have in as deep a way. So we aim to help employers understand these strengths and understand how best to support their employees who are in their workforces who are living with such conditions. And if they can do that, then they can build a better culture. They can build better productivity from their employees overall. And not only will they help those folks with their recoveries, because meaningful work is a really helpful tool for recovery, but they'll help themselves as well with the success of their businesses. So that's our kind of selling point that we aim to bring more companies into the fold with as we develop the program.
Yeah, full circle with what you started with in your story. Neurodiversity, we actually, the last podcast I had was with my friend Prantik Kundu, who speaks about his experiences with neurodiversity and the stigma associated. And then his message is exactly the same, that there's so much untapped value with having diversity in brain structure and function that, companies should be really excited to bring these people on for those exact reasons. So I just love that that's where the value is. And especially when AI is coming on board, when it's stripping out all the, the neurotypical people are going to be all out of their jobs.
Well, I hope we can find, meaningful work for everyone. I'll give an example of what you just described. One of the members of our Lived Experience Council, Alex Sheehan, he graciously let us use his story in describing our program to a potential employer partner for the program, and that employer has now joined our employer council. And so it's a successful meeting that we had showcasing Alex's story. But he talks about how in his work life, initially he had a supervisor that was not supportive, and it led to lots of challenges for his mental health and his emotional life, and he didn't do it nearly as well in the workplace as he's now doing, now that he has a supportive supervisor, which transformed his experience. And now he's a Beaumont Foundation 40 under 40 and public health scholar, and on his PhD track, and just doing amazing things in the world. And support is what made a huge difference for him.
Yep. And it just takes one person to believe in you. I remember Alex saying something like that. He's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that story.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so selfishly, I want to ask you, because holidays are stressful, and I know the holidays are coming up, and there's a lot of stress, day-to-day life routines, work. So what would be your tips for how you take care of your mental health and continue to do this amazing work in your leadership roles? Like what tidbits can you give our audience?
Pacing is important. I find developing a routine that enables me to take care of my mental well-being while still accomplishing the things that I need to do each day, it's been super helpful. So I make it a point to get to bed by a reasonable hour, no later than 10:30, less that I went to bed before 10 and got up. I got at least 7 hours of sleep. So that's my kind of benchmark, at least 7 hours every night. Yeah. I meditate and exercise every morning. When in the mornings I make time to do that, it makes a huge difference for my balanced stability throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And I find that when I do these things regularly, I'm able to perform much better at work and in relationships. And having emphasized this kind of routine and a focus on my well-being over the last couple of months, it's really helped me succeed even better in meetings and things like that. And so it pays off to invest in your mental well-being. It doesn't take a lot of time to do it, but it does take some time. But you'll find that it pays dividends, and the ROI is greater than the investment.
Completely agree with that. And it sounds so simple, right? Just get some sleep and just do, your routine in the morning. But I see the same thing in my own life. It's just incredibly helpful. And, you and I both have dogs, and you can do this experiment where if you feed them at a different time, or if you, change their, the schedule, like they're all out of whack. So humans are no different. So same kind of thing, right? Like 5 o'clock rolls around, and if your dog is just like, are you going to feed me? Are you going to feed me?
Yeah.
But
you have an early riser dog.
Yeah.
You have your own alarm clock that way.
Yeah, but that same routine and the consistency, your nervous system begins to expect it, and it helps you stay, be able to do all the wonderful things that you do. So thank you for sharing that. All right, before we close, just what message, Brandon, would you like to end on for our listeners, anyone who's living with mental illness or has a loved one or supporting someone affected?
Thank you for the opportunity. So I'd like to say that yes, psychiatry is important for healing for someone with a more serious mental health condition, but so is love. Love is incredibly important, not only to offer to someone, but enable them to offer back. And I found that, as I said earlier in the conversation, love was one of the primary drivers, and the aspiration to feel love again and engage in a loving relationship again was a huge motivator for me to focus on my own recovery. And so if you have a loved one who's experiencing serious mental health challenges, they might feel different to you in the way they behave and interact to you than they might have before their diagnosis, but they're still there. And if you can help them understand how loved they are, and if they can really get that, as I was able to, thanks to the love of my own family, then that will help them, I think, in not only understanding that they're valued, but also that they have something to live for, and something to grow toward. If you're living with a mental health condition, I encourage you to develop your relationships and the love you can offer, as well as to receive. You may find it difficult to form new relationships with your condition or maintaining current relationships, but one thing that Ellen Sachs, the great lawyer who lives with schizophrenia, once told me is that the best way to make friends is to be a good friend. And so another thing that another advocate, Jewel, the singer-songwriter, once said was, I give love to others, but I give myself hell. And that was a lyric in one of her songs. And so if you can offer yourself self-compassion in that journey as well, it'll be beneficial for you as you go forward.
Brandon, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And I thank you for sharing your story and, giving us the insights on how you built back your confidence with everything you've been through. And I told you this, I think, in California, that I really do feel like you sharing your story will help so many people. I've certainly learned a lot today. And I just want to thank you for your leadership in this space and your vision for innovation and inclusion in mental health. And your work has shown truly what's possible in this space and that we can center and elevate lived experiences. So just thank you so much again.
You're welcome, Hilary. It's been great to talk with you today, and thanks so much for being such a great supporter and for the opportunity to share my message with everyone on your podcast. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. And just quickly for our listeners, if you want to learn more about One Mind, Brandon, the Lived Experience Council, or ways to get involved, I will definitely link to resources in the show notes so you can learn more. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brandon.